Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervase Charmley. This is not the Shropshire church, this is the church of St Milburga, Stoke St Milborough. Obviously, St Milburga's at Stoke. The village is so named because around about 680 AD, according to the stories, St Milburga, who was an Anglo-Saxon princess who had become a nun. There seems to have been this thing with Anglo-Saxon princesses. Well, in fact, Anglo-Saxon princesses and even medieval princesses, quite often the options were you either got married off to someone for political reasons or you became a nun and had your own monastery and you were somebody in charge of your nunnery. And St Milburga was one of those princesses. And she was riding through the village when she fell off her horse and struck her head. And according to the legend, when the people ran to help her, they couldn't find any water, but her horse struck the ground with a hoof, and immediately a spring of water burst forth that is today called St Milburga's Well. And of course the water then could be used to help her and revive her. What a helpful horse. But this church has 12th century origins. There must have been an Anglo-Saxon church here because of the St Milburga connection. But this building, there's nothing here that's pre-12th century, and a lot of it is 13th, 14th even. And a lot of it is 13th, 14th century. So let's have a look around. As usual, of course, we start at the west end. We have here a bier. You'll notice this is quite a late one. It's got suspension and wheels. The earlier ones were just hand transported. We've got the royal arms here. They are Hanoverian. A nice roof. I mean, that looks. Yes, it's 18th century. It's got on the centre there the date 1707 and names of John Collins and Thomas something or other church warden, and of course Francis Harper carpenter. So we know who, at least, well, this would have been who did the repairs, because some of that wood looks earlier. I mean, that's there. You can just see evidence that far one, a top cross beam above the chancel arch, has carving on it, indicating it would have had something to do with the rood screen. Might even be the remains of the rood beam, indeed. So recycled timber. Anyway, really nice font. This great big fluted tub. It's an enormous great tub, that one. I mean, you could certainly get a toddler in there, if not a 10-year-old. Depending, of course, on the size of the 10-year-old. They tend to be a bit smaller in the Middle Ages. The pews are Victorian, 19th century seating. And the evidence, yes, there's where the old box pews have been turned into panelling here against the walls. That's very, very common. We've got a side access there, which probably also doubles as a squint for a side altar. Would you expect there to be a side altar here, a lady chapel, because again this is St Milburga's, so dedicated to a local female saint. Nice big pulpit. These chairs are new. They've opened it up a bit here to allow for concerts and other such events. Really nice wooden eagle lectern, obviously Victorian, with got nice big lion's paw feet, and there's a very noble eagle. Again, really Victorian. I've got a few surviving pre-Victorian choir stalls here. Look at that. This, of course, wouldn't be choir stalls, it would have been pews, but they're now used as choir stalls, and rightly so. Boarded, very plain altar. Again, we've got these box pew panelling here. Various memorials looking west. One thing, this is actually a late 12th century or early 13th century archway. Again, it's this transitional style. The same is true of the one at the west end, and it's that lovely roof. Absolutely gorgeous roof here. They had some very good roofs in Shropshire. Edward Botterell of the Heath in this parish. The Botterells are a very ancient local family. In fact, there's a village named for them. That's that important. And then you've got William Smith of Bockleton Court. Catherine, wife of George Hooper, surgeon of Ludlow, and Catherine, wife of John Whitefoot, of Cleedownton. George Lee here, and dates 1673, so 1673, and he's got his alabaster arms up there. Now that is alabaster. Now on this side we have something that's again quite common in this part of the world. This is not stone at all, this is wood. You can see how it's split down the middle, but it's been painted to imitate stone. And we have here Edmund Bearcroft of Mere Green Hall in Worcestershire, and the date is 1667, and we've got these putty, sometimes referred to as cherubs, but really they're putty, and these little underclad weeping boys. I find them sometimes where they just haven't got any clothes on at all. But there we are. And bits where repairs have happened. We've got a spare foot and a piece of an arm there. And there's the piscina, but you can see behind it remains of something else. And there, through that side doorway. So very simple. The east window, you've just got this panel of Christ in midair, which I suppose is supposed to represent the Ascension. But it's a standard sort of stock image, that one. You can get them from, I think, probably most stained glass artists or most glass painters in those days. So, and again, you've got additional window there for the pulpit. So very, very handsome building. As you see there, that's where the rood screen access would have been. Quite probably an external staircase. You do see them sometimes. They're quite rare, but they do exist. And so there we are. And then we've got the War Memorial for the 1939-45 war. Harold Mantleshill Turner, Albert Roden. And then you've got the First World War Memorial here. Arthur Bowen, Thomas Bunt, Stuart Davison, George Jones, Alfred Matthews, Samuel Millichamp, Alfred T. Millichamp, and Alfred Poynter. There we are, that nice transitional arch there. It's all whitewashed inside, which is, again, traditional. Perhaps in the past it would have been more sort of the ochre colour that we saw back at Tugford, but right now it's whitewash, which is very fitting for these little country churches. So very, very pleasant. Well, that's the inside. Let's go outside. And so here we are outside at St Milburga. As you can see, again, it's quite a big building, and one of the reasons for that is it reflects the fact that you had this St Milburga as well. You had this pilgrimage, therefore, possibility here, that this was a church that could attract visitors who wanted to see and wanted to drink of the water of the well, which of course would be regarded as water that had special healing properties, and probably it couldn't hurt. And there are some cases where it could hurt because it was in the wrong place, but here that probably couldn't have hurt. So building nice big medieval church. As we go around, we'll see some of the later additions. As it stands, it looks very much as it would have done to some extent in the 14th century, although again the walls would originally almost certainly have been rendered and whitewashed, because then it would have stood out for miles as just this gleaming white structure. And it's on a fairly elevated site. We'll see that as we go round. It would have just have been there as a beacon. Here is the pilgrimage church. Come on pilgrimage and pray. And of course the Reformation ends all that. It becomes like just a simple ordinary parish church. But it still is, it's a thriving village. It's not one of these abandoned villages. And it's not just big because of pilgrimage, it's big because the parish would have needed a certain amount of accommodation. So that's enough of me talking about the outside. Let's have a look at the outside. So here we are on the outside. Here's the south side, and there's the east end. You can see that buttress. This is because, of course, it's on the side of a hill. You can just see it goes uphill there. and if it wasn't supported more significantly on that side, it would do some falling down. Top part of the tower looks 15th century, again probably replaces a timber top. You can see a corbel table where the earlier tower would have ended, but probably have supported a timber belfry up there. Sort of well, a bit of carving on the lintel there. You can just see embedded in the wall there a bit of dogtooth moulding from a Norman archway or other Norman decoration. The porch is 17th century, maybe 16th century, but certainly timber framed, 16th, 17th century, and it's that close timber studding with now brick between them, and could very well originally have been wattle and daub between them, but that's been altered because brick don't replace it so often. The doorway is very like that at St Margaret's. Window, Victorian window again, well, like those at St Margaret's. There's not a lot of space on the south side because, as you can see, there's the upper vicarage there, and you see it all goes downhill from there. And I don't mean that metaphorically, I mean that literally. We've got see the hill, so you come down the hill in that direction from St Margaret's, or you come up the hill, and again there's evidence of render on the outside of the church, which doesn't surprise me at all, because a building like this would be rendered on the outside, as I say, to make it look even grander, to make it look as if it were made of expensive white stone and not your local stone with this browner, earthier colour to it. So no evidence of a north door. There must have been one, because they were, as I say, necessary for the medieval baptismal ritual with its exorcism, where the devil would be ritually shown out the north door, as it were. Big medieval window there in the chancel. See that's the 17th century window for the pulpit, but these windows are Victorian, being restored there, but that is medieval, that one there. Little lich gate down there, not very substantial, but don't need to be. Just, and there is Clee Hill. There's a basic early warning system on the top of it to warn about near-Earth objects or the asteroid that hopefully will miss us. I'm not talking about any specific asteroid at this time. If you are watching this if you're watching this at any date, but that's where they observe the asteroid. That's part of the Space Guard system. Now here we have these memorials on the east wall, and they're quite a prestigious place to have your memorial. So back round here, because one thing you need to have a look at on this side, and that is the door where the rood loft access was. You can just see it up there. And what they would have had, there would have been a timber staircase, or not much more than a ladder on the outside, and you go up there to get onto the rood loft, and depending on what's going on, you might have a reading would be done from there, you might have some people singing up there. You have to go up there to light candles. But the rood loft goes out of use at the Reformation. It becomes regarded as superstitious and awful effort to get up there in the first place. But that then is the church here at Stoke St Milborough. And so there we have it, St Milburga's Stoke St Milborough, this lovely, peaceful, rural church with its legends and its history. Well, thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.